This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Monday Mashup with Shea Norling. I'm your host, Shea Norling. This episode of the Monday Mashup on Detroit Sports Podcast Network brought to you by The Athletic. The Athletic is premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. There's tons of awesome writers with The Athletic, and Pierre LeBrun with the NHL, Ken Rosenthal with Major League Baseball, awesome NFL writers, awesome NBA writers, tons of great articles on a daily basis, and they're now opening up a college football division, which is important. College football is right around the corner. We're getting excited about it. We have some things to say about it on this episode. College basketball. The Athletic is getting involved in both of those with a lot of in-depth coverage. And being that it's a subscription-based website, you're listening to Detroit Sports Podcast Network. You're listening to the Monday Mashup. We know you love premium content. This is your opportunity to save a little money. What's better than saving money? Nothing. Listeners can save 30% off a subscription by visiting theathletic.com/DSP. That's theathletic.com/DSP, and they're going to give you 30% off the access to the new sports page, the best sports page, the new standard of sports journalism, The Athletic. Just visit theathletic.com/DSP, and you're going to get 30% off. Okay, I want to jump into this kind of the same way I did last week. I did a little monologue, and then I welcomed in my co-host, and we talked. I have another monologue, and I'm angry again at a few different things, and I'm irritated. And it's stuff I feel like I shouldn't have to talk about, but I do because they just don't go away, even though they should. And last week I talked about the national anthem policy in the NFL and how dreadful it is, and how they just need to figure that out. And this is just an opportunity to piggyback on that because an unbelievable thing happened this week when cartoon character and buffoon owner of the Cowboys, Jerry Jones, decided that he was going to come out and fly in the face of the NFL's currently tabled anthem policy and say that all of the Cowboys players are required to be on the field and standing at attention during the anthem, even though the policy says they can stay in the locker room if they want to. And he didn't even stop there, because why would he when he lives in Jerry World, where he gets to say asinine things like toe the line to grown men on his football team? Like, this is this same guy who last year ran down from his luxury box to go to the 50-yard line, lock arms with his black players in a show of unity, and show them just how much he cares about them. And now, a year later, here we are, where Jerry Jones is going to say this: we stand by Papa John's, and we believe the Cowboys are the face of Papa John's. Excuse me? Don't ever try to tell me that owners care. Ever. You are the face of Papa John's? Dude, Papa John's pizza isn't good enough to be the face of them. I could put pepperoni on cardboard and it would taste better. Let alone is it worth standing in front of the face of this organization in Papa John's just after their founder lost his job because he can't stop saying the N-word? Like, what are you thinking, Jerry? How is this a good PR move? Like, who is this guy's publicist that was like, yeah, go out and get in front of this one and let the world know that you stand by an organization that was run by a racist. Oh, by the way, their pizza sucks too. Like, why? I don't get how this is a good look. Like, it's amazing to me, less than a week after the Dolphins reopened the anthem discussion, Jerry Jones puts his foot in his mouth again. And it's just further proof that it just goes to prove the point that I made last week, that players aren't respected. The league doesn't care about them. And if it comes at the expense of losing a couple bucks, they will roll the bus right over their players. I mean, they don't care at all. And it was shocking to me. But I digress, because what I really want to rant about is something completely different. And it's college football based, and it's local. And I said on this podcast recently, just a couple episodes ago, that when Michigan linebacker Devin Bush called Michigan State little brother on Twitter, he was being an idiot. And I stand by that, because I don't understand why you want to fuel the fire. So I have to add on that earlier, I believe this week, when LJ Scott, Michigan State running back and fumble king, commented on Michigan as little sister, he was being equally stupid. Like, LJ, worry about holding on to the football before you start trying to throw superlatives at Michigan. Like, don't call him little sister. What do you get out of that? I don't know why the hell players would ever think it's a good idea to provide a rival with extra motivation. Like, LJ has personally been a part of teams that utilized little brother as a weapon. He should know not to sharpen the blade for the Wolverines. But as much as LJ really just pissed me off by speaking out and targeting Michigan with an admittedly stupid nickname, I take issue with the Michigan fans out there that think little brother is still a term they get to use. And the reason one, for the Michigan fans that still use this, you poor things, one, know that Michigan State fans with rational working brains do not take offense to it. We are not your little brother. No one is. I can say that comfortably because of the wonderful article that came out and ranked all of the schools in all of the conferences by the number of elite wins that they have over the past 5 years. And guess how many Michigan has? 0. Imagine thinking you can argue a position of superiority when you don't beat anyone. You want to pimp the all-time record like anyone cares that you beat up on Agricultural College in the 1940s? God forbid anyone brings up the fact the record's damn near 500 since both schools have been Big Ten members. You haven't beaten a ranked opponent on the road in over a decade. Like, who are you calling little brother? The school up north that shares the same number of elite wins the last 5 years as Bama? Even Bowling Green has one. Like, I don't understand where the imagined superiority comes from, because you act like Harbaugh having 3 more wins than D'Antonio over the last 3 years makes him obviously the objectively better football coach. Sure, Harbaugh never went 3-9, but you're telling me D'Antonio could go 3-9 and you're only 3 wins better and you're bragging about it? Dude, you haven't won the Big Ten under Harbaugh. You haven't beaten a rival with a competitive team, and you haven't won a single quality road game. You pimp wins over Wisconsin and then turn around and say the conference needs to be realigned because Wisconsin is so bad. And you have a coach who thinks that there should be 16 teams in the playoff and no conference title game. You want to talk about little brother? Beat us. You want to talk about Harbaugh being better than D'Antonio? Beat us. Don't give me the quarterbacks bullshit. Don't give me the fluke. Just win. You treat 38-0 in the playoff as some sort of hilarious failure. At least we got there and won the conference. 2 things you haven't sniffed since 2003. Don't tell me about a first down call against Ohio State like your head coach and Messiah wasn't calling long developing play action passes on 3rd and a mile out of the shadow of his end zone that led to interceptions. Don't tell me your rugby punter didn't drop the ball and forgo the fact that your Lord and Savior sent gunners out on the field against an 11-man rush. You want to know Harbaugh's legacy? Loss at Iowa. Can't beat Ohio State. Can't beat Michigan State team with a pulse. Can't win bowl games. Can't finish better than 3rd in the Big Ten East. You want to act like he's objectively the best coach in the state? It's slander. You want to call us little brother? We'll just continue to weaponize it and kick your ass every October. This isn't a fan base in sports with as much blind faith and delusion as the Michigan fans, and it's not all of them. I'm lucky enough to have a rational one as my co-host, I hope. We'll see in a minute. But you want to flap your gums like you're an elite football program? Go ahead. It's not doing you any favors. You have as many elite wins as Rutgers. Here's a word of advice that I know a lot of you aren't going to heed. Quit the chatter until you actually beat a rival in a meaningful game, if you know what's good for you. If you don't think Jim Harbaugh's seat should be feeling warm this year, then I'm sorry for you. Have higher standards. All I ask is that Harbaugh and Michigan players and Michigan fans that want to say that they're the best football program ever go out and prove it. Until then, shut the hell up. It's embarrassing. You're not offending anyone. You're not hurting our feelings. You're just making a fool of yourself. And on that note, I will welcome in noted Michigan fan and my co-host and my good friend, Tanner Seltzer. What's going on?
What's going on, man? That was a lot to take in, but I have some things I got to say. First of all, I agree with you for the most part that, you know, it's time for Michigan fans to just shut up. It's time. We got to go out there and perform to our best ability. But for the fans that don't, you know, they always say the little brother, and you know what? It gets under your skin, and they know that because it gets a reaction out of you guys. Like, you guys are like, oh my God, look at this guy. He's talking again. And you guys lose your mind over it. It doesn't make sense to me. If you guys were so offended by it, the saying little brother, and you guys have gone out there and won 8 of the last 10 or whatever under, you know, whatever circumstances you won, but you guys just get so offended over a saying. It's so funny. And you guys get riled up all the time, and like you guys say little sister. LJ Scott, made the comments little sister,
Idiot.
which
He's
is
stupid.
Not the first time we've ever heard the little sister thing either, I might add. But
anybody who says it is stupid.
It just sounds awful. Like little brother just sounds better to me. I mean, I'm just being biased, but anyway, I'm getting off track. Little brother, like I said, you guys just get too riled up over it. If you want it to go away, it's just like bullying, okay? You just ignore it and you let those idiots that are talking, let them keep talking. And if you guys keep going out there and win, then it will go away. I promise you that. It's literally the exact same thing as bullying. When you want a bully to stop doing it, you just ignore them, and they don't get as much satisfaction out of it. But we get satisfaction out of seeing all these Michigan State fans get butthurt over a saying that some running back made 10 years ago.
Now, understand, to me, Michigan State fans who are actually getting butthurt over little brother are idiots. Like, I kind of feed off it at this point, because every time it comes out, it's just like, all right, slap that one on the bulletin board and let Mark do what he does, because you can't tell me there's a better coach in America who's done a better job of turning one phrase and one game into everything for those players. Where, like, it doesn't offend me, but I look at it and I go, if I'm looking at this from a Michigan fan standpoint, how could you possibly embrace it when you have Devin Bush coming out and saying it? And, like, again, rational fans, I don't think, get upset by it. But 21, 22-year-old men on the football field in East Lansing know it, hear it, and get pissed. And those are the ones you don't want to piss off, because they're the ones that are going out and kicking your ass in October. And that's like, it's just, I don't get why Michigan fan would embrace it at this point. It hasn't done the team any favors.
I mean, there are some fans and people in Harbaugh's ear that are telling him, you should be 3-0 against Michigan State. You should have won the game against Ohio State in 2016. You were, literally inches away from winning that game. And, a majority of the fan base feels the exact same way. And that's why we say stuff like that, because, and I'm not going to say, I shouldn't say we, I don't really ever echo the little brother sentiment or saying. I don't ever say that, but it's just the thought process in Ann Arbor is way different than any other city college football town in America. Like, well, not any. There's some crazy radical fans out there in every fan base, but Michigan has the most extreme fans.
They're rabid.
They are. They're crazy. But like I said, majority of the fan base feels they should be winning, have a winning record against their rivals, which in my opinion, I came on here a couple weeks ago and I said the exact same thing. We should have won 2015 against Michigan State, should have beat, if it wasn't for a freaking monsoon last year, who knows how that game goes. I'm not going to say we should have won. I'm just saying who knows how that game goes. And then 2016, of course, very controversial, a lot of potential missed calls that were not called, and not to mention 4th and inches or whatever it was. Anyway,
and again, dude, I'm fine with that, but I think it's a toxic mindset. And like I said, you have a coach who, with the rugby punt, he had gunners out against an 11-man rush, and you have in Ohio State multiple turnovers in critical situations, a lot of which to do with Harbaugh's play calling and allowing play calling. Like, who's letting third and a mile long developing play action passes out of the shadow of your end zone?
Line. Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that one. And then we were on the 1-yard line of Ohio State, knocking on the door, and we fumbled, which is a player error. Like, Coach Harbaugh can't do anything about his player dropping the ball on the goal line, turning it over. But anyway, I like you said, it is a toxic mindset. It's not a good mindset, which leads into me saying this year is the year. As of right now, Harbaugh is not on the hot seat. Like, at this very moment, he's, obviously there's some question marks around him, but he needs to have a good year. He needs to go out and win games, period. And of course, any Michigan fan is going to agree with me. They're not going to be happy with another 8-4 season or a 9-3 season would just not suffice. He needs to at least make an appearance in Indy this year, at least an appearance. That's literally the bare minimum he needs to do. And also I will add on, he needs to either beat Michigan State or Ohio State, one of the two, preferably both if possible. And, of course, and then Notre Dame, the rivalry starting back up with Notre Dame now. he needs to go out and prove a point there too.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have something about the Notre Dame game. Michigan hasn't beaten a ranked opponent on the road since 2006. They're going to open the season in South Bend with rabid fans just screaming their asses off. I have worries that Michigan starts the season 0-1.
I mean, of course you do. They're valid worries. I mean, back when Michigan was playing Notre Dame yearly, that was a big game. It was always either the second game or the third game, and it was a big game every time. And I think usually the first game, like they didn't even have a spring game this year, so we don't even know what this team's going to look like. We don't know who the quarterback is really. We don't know how they fit into this system. There's going to be a lot of question marks with Michigan fans, and this is Harbaugh's moment. He literally, like, I think this first game is literally probably the second most important game of the season, in my opinion, because of the question marks surrounding him right now and the importance of just getting that first win on the road against a rival.
Against a ranked rival, too. Notre Dame, yes, don't forget, was a top 10 finisher last year. This is an opportunity for Harbaugh, one, to kind of change the narrative, but it's a scary game because if you go and beat Notre Dame, all of a sudden, the narrative has changed. Michigan gets their first road win against a ranked opponent since 2006. You're going out, you beat Notre Dame. Then you get a couple easy games. The schedule gets a little tougher, but the narrative is already set. You're probably going into East Lansing unbeaten, which, great. But if he goes and loses that game, that sets the tone for a way darker overtone for the rest of the season. And I think it gets really murky for him if he loses that game at Notre Dame. I agree. That game at Notre Dame, people are sleeping on it. And there's a lot of talk like, well, it's an out-of-conference game, so it's not huge for us depending on getting to Indy. But I tell you, I think people are forgetting how important that one's going to be.
It's a big game, and I've always said that between the Notre Dame game, Michigan State, and Ohio State, he has to win 2 out of 3. So if he loses, it's not the end of the world. And we've seen ranked teams or high standing teams that lose that first game and they end up bouncing back and making the Final Four or making it to a conference championship game. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying for his his mental mindset that he has right now of this team and his fan base, he needs that first win. It would be a great start to the season and just a great way to get this program moving and quiet the doubters for a little bit.
On the topic of Michigan, I have another thing. What is up with these fans? And it's been on multiple Twitter polls. There are all these Michigan fans that for some reason believe you could go 2-9 throughout the year. If you finish 3-9 and win number 3 is over Ohio State, the season was a success. I don't understand that at all.
No, I don't understand that either. Like, it's a nice little, I guess a takeaway for the season. Like if you beat Ohio State, even though you finished like a shit record like that, but I could care less if they went. I would rather have them go 11-1 and lose that one game to Ohio State. Personally, that's just me. I'd rather see them go to Indy and play for a Big Ten title if it meant losing to Ohio State for that one game. So I'm not with that minority of fan base or of the fan base that agrees with that, because that's just a terrible loser's mindset to have.
It's just
for football.
It's an awful mindset, and that's the biggest thing with everything I've been saying is the closer that we get to this football season, I kept thinking, look, Michigan has a shot this year. Harbaugh finally has a quarterback. He's finally in this situation where he has a new offensive line coach, and maybe the offensive line comes together a little bit. And he's in this situation where, he's getting the 5-star transfer out of Ole Miss. He's got an established team, bringing back 20 of 22 starters or whatever it is. And this is a year where Harbaugh can go out and prove it. And as we get closer to the start of the season, I keep seeing this same toxic mindset that has been kind of plaguing the program for the past decade, and it's starting to give me pause and think, I don't know if he's actually going to right the ship.
Okay, this is my thing about that too. Is I was going to bring this up earlier, but like I mentioned it a couple weeks ago that if you watch those games last year, Michigan showed signs that they were capable of winning every game that they were in, that they lost. They were capable. They showed flashes of defense just holding their own, doing a great job. And then it came down to the offense. It came down to quarterback play towards the end of games. And, the defense was out there for so long because the offense was so inefficient that, but like I said, I think there's other fans like me that see the potential of the team and what they can do. And returning starters on top of that, they have potential.
The most impressive thing that Harbaugh has shown me in his tenure at Michigan, and it's been incredibly consistent, even in games where you are not competing, like in Penn State. The one thing that has been amazing is that Harbaugh has weathered the storm of the bad offenses by consistently winning the field position battle, and it's almost been amazing.
That's true.
That he's had such spectacular special teams and such spectacular, because even in the Michigan State game in 2015 with the punt, Michigan State outgained and really offensively outplayed Michigan, but it was that bend don't break defense, and it was Harbaugh like, yeah, you can rack up yards against us because we're going to start you at the 5 every single possession. Yeah. And that's an amazing thing to be able to accomplish. The worry is, and we saw a lot of it last year more than we did in past years under Don Brown, but last year against good teams at the end of games like Penn State, like Ohio State, Michigan State not so much because Michigan State just committed to L.J. Scott carrying the ball right up the middle and praying to God that he would hold on to it. But we saw the Michigan defense kind of fold against good teams late, and I think that's, again, a symptom of you aren't efficient enough on offense, and that has to change first. And my worry, again, is I don't know if the offensive line is going to get better enough in one offseason to really change that.
I don't know if it comes down to the offensive line. Of course, they're a huge part of the progression of this team and their efficiency, no question about it. But Michigan showed a capability of running the ball and doing it effectively towards the end of the season last year, and that was with no quarterback. That was just because they knew they didn't have a quarterback. They didn't have a shot in hell of throwing the ball and doing it well. And like I said earlier, we don't know what Shea Patterson or we don't know if he's starting. We don't know what he's going to look like under this system. Presumably he will, which I think he will, of course, but we just don't know. We don't know. The Notre Dame game is going to tell the tale of the season. I think, of course, they're going to have hiccups in that first game, and just because it is the first game, it's their first live action they've seen because they didn't even play a spring game. So, but like I said, we'll see. It's going to be super interesting, and a lot of question marks are going to be raised until we see them on the field. What's
interesting too is. And people ask, like, why aren't you talking about Michigan State as much? And I think Michigan State does have question marks, but what's weird is, like, there's not nearly as much being given to Michigan State because they just had that bounce back season where they went from 3-9 to another 10-win year. And it's like there's not so much thought of, are they going to bounce back? What needs to change? Like, that's why so much is focused on Michigan right now, because Michigan State, don't get me wrong, does have question marks, mostly in the running game, which is odd because it's been such a staple under the D'Antonio tenure that you just will run the ball down your throat. But do we have a running back who can't hold on to the football? And the weird thing about it is, one thing Michigan State's never had, but now we do, is we have a quarterback who could break off a 100-yard rushing game any given night. And that's where I think Michigan is changing too, because we haven't seen a quarterback with the scramble ability that Shea Patterson has as a pro-style quarterback in that system either. So they're like both teams, I think, have a lot to think about, and we're going to learn a lot about them. In the case of Michigan, obviously, week 1 at Notre Dame, Michigan State gets the easy game against Utah State and East Lansing, but I think when they go to Arizona State week 2, that's where we start learning a lot about them too.
Yeah, no, that's a big game. I was talking to a friend of mine about that game. On the road, West Coast, late at night too. This is
10:45.
Yeah, 11 o'clock almost on the East Coast. Like, that's going to be real interesting. That could get hairy. I would, of course, expect Michigan State to win just because Arizona State's not near what I think Michigan State is capable of, but yeah, that's going to be an interesting game to watch for sure.
Well, yeah, and I agree, because you look at it, Arizona State, really, their best hope for the season, like their goal, is to play for the Pac-12 title. And Michigan State is make the playoff, realistically. So you look at that game, it's almost a trap to me, because I think even though the Pac-12 is not as good, anytime you're going on the road to a team that can contend for a Power 5 title, it's a tough game, especially early in the year.
Too. We don't think about that factor. Like, that's a lot of traveling, a lot of just time zone differences and stuff. And little stuff like that can add up and make a difference. So, I mean, Michigan had to do it a couple of years ago too. In 2015, Harbaugh's first game, he went to Utah across the country. He almost pulled it off, but it wasn't quite enough. But it's interesting to see that, see the differences and stuff like that. Traveling across the country is a big deal, and early in the season too, like that, is pretty hard.
And we remember in what year was it, 2014 or 2013, when must have been 2014, when Michigan State went to Eugene, Oregon, and got smoked. I mean, the West Coast travel, it takes its toll.
Yeah, it's not easy at all. So, I mean, yeah, I'm definitely – but the good thing is defense does travel, and Michigan State has a pretty solid one. So I hope, they're probably banking on that traveling with you at least.
So another topic that we wanted to get to is, again, we're piggybacking off of last week's episode. Dude, how great is it to talk football?
I love it, dude. Oh, my God. It just makes it so much easier to feed my addiction, just kind of ease me into the season.
Well, the good news, Tanner, is this. I don't know if you're aware, but we're recording this on a Sunday. It comes out on Monday. As you know, after today, there are no more Sundays without football until the Super Bowl.
I have a big smile on my face. Just to let you guys know, I'm excited.
It is a beautiful time of year.
I'm going to sit there and watch the Hall of Fame game, that first preseason game, and just have the biggest grin on my face. I don't even care who's playing. I don't even know, but I'm going to watch it.
Yeah, I'm just, oh my God, I'm so happy. I needed this.
Yes. Well, I guess are we going to dive into our division breakdown?
Yeah, so we are doing the thing we did last week. If you want to go back, if you missed last week's episode, you want to go back and check it out. We are breaking down every division in the NFL leading up to the NFL regular season. Last week we did the AFC West. This week we want to focus on the NFC North and the NFC East. And I picked these two divisions because the NFC East, I think we're both going to be able to blow through pretty quickly. And the NFC North, maybe a little less so because it might be the best division in football. So I want to start with the NFC East. And really just a team by team thing here. You look at it, is there any shot that the Eagles don't win this division?
I mean, of course there's a chance. And I've always said every year, this is my philosophy, that like the teams that are high up there, they very rarely repeat success the following season. And coming off a Super Bowl, you don't see, teams repeat very often or do the same thing. They did add a lot of good pieces, though. I will say that their free agency was incredible. I was scratching my head just in disbelief at the pieces they were getting all off season. So, I mean, of course there's a chance, but I mean, as of right now, I'm taking Philly to win the division. I think what's more interesting is talking about a potential wild card spot out of one of the other three teams.
Which I look at the bottom half of the division. The Redskins switched from Kirk Cousins to Alex Smith, which I don't know. I'm not sold that Kirk Cousins is able to get it done at an NFL level yet, but I think if you're going from Kirk Cousins to Alex Smith, you're objectively getting worse at the quarterback position. And the Giants still have that goofball Eli Manning, despite the fact they got Saquon Barkley. I have questions all over the place for the Giants there. I don't know what kind of team they're putting together. So I look at this division and I see the Cowboys have young Dak Prescott, who's still waiting to have a breakout season, even though I think he's not good. And you look at the Eagles, people also forget that this is a team that went 13-3 and won the Super Bowl without their MVP candidate.
Yeah, that's true. That's my biggest question mark about the team is, who's going to be the starting quarterback to start the season? Because, I mean, it's a good problem to have if you're a Philly fan, but, Nick Foles showed capability of being a starting quarterback if he runs that style of offense. But Carson Wentz was also killing it before he went down with an ACL.
And that's where I think, obviously, it's got to be Carson Wentz to me. That's going to be your starting quarterback. But it's weird because I think you look at this team, and interestingly enough, like Carson Wentz is going to have a comeback year because of the injury, the torn ACL. He's going to have to come back and really produce at the rate that he was before he got hurt. And the margin of error is going to be really slim because he's got a Super Bowl winning quarterback backing him up.
Yeah, and I also think the other thing, too, is like they could play it safe and just, start Nick Foles and then bring in Carson Wentz. Once he's fully healthy, they're 100% ready to bring him in. So, I mean, it could be a good problem to have, but also, like you said, it could create some pressure for Carson Wentz, knowing that he's got someone breathing down his neck ready to take his spot.
And that's where it is a good problem to have on paper. But the dynamic of it may cause a little bit of issue, especially early in the season when they're trying to figure things out. Because, again, like Carson Wentz knowing he has a quarterback right there who just won Super Bowl MVP and won the Super Bowl, dude, like that's tough for anyone.
Absolutely. Real quick, I want to talk about the Giants. You mentioned, of course, Eli Manning, your betrayed, your super rival that killed your quarterback twice in the Super Bowl.
My kryptonite.
Your kryptonite, yeah. I'm a little more optimistic about the Giants this year. They had a pretty down year from 2016, right? Yeah, 2016 was the year they had a really solid year.
Yep.
The defense was killing it. But last year, their defense had a lot of injuries, and also
they couldn't get off the field.
They couldn't get off the field, and their defense had a lot of injuries at like the linebacker position here and there, just everywhere. So here's my thought process. I'm gonna get to that. The defense is returning, and they were solid before, and I think this year they're gonna echo those same play style and that same capability of being great, and I think they're gonna be solid this year defensively. And then you go out and add a guy like Saquon Barkley, who is an athletic freak. Okay, and the Giants haven't had a running back since I can remember, since Tiki Barber was there. Or whoever.
Ahmad Bradshaw trying not to get into the end zone in the Super Bowl.
Right. And so this is my point. You get a guy like Saquon Barkley on the field, and everyone's focused on the run. If he can produce, people forget there's a guy named Odell Beckham Jr. on the field. He has potential to have a monster year, or both of these guys have potential to have a monster year because they're going to bounce off each other. And then you still have that young guy, Evan Ingram, at tight end. He had a solid breakout rookie season last year that he kind of went under the radar because they were so bad. But I just think this offense is in a prime spot. Eli can still make some throws. He's not Peyton Manning at 40 years old on Denver. He's still got some juice in him. I think they could make a run. And for me personally, Shea, I think this is the second place finishing team in the division and possibly a contender for a wild card spot in the NFC.
It could be interesting because the defense is good, and I honestly think the defense automatically gets that much better just because you have Saquon Barkley, and if he is a first down machine like he really could be, you're looking at a defense that won't have to be on the field nearly as often as they were asked to be last year. Already a huge change. The question for me is, as much as Odell Beckham is poised to have a breakout season and really just be unbelievable and contend for records, it's equally likely that he goes and just screws up because he can't get out of his own way. This is a guy who is doing coke off of a girl's ass in Spain and putting the video out on the internet, and the whole thing on the boat and the party, and then showing up to the game after and just being horrible. This is a guy who, as much as he is an athletic freak and as good as he is, and maybe he has potential to be the best wide receiver in football, he has to get his act together and do it consistently, because the stuff he's offering the Giants off the field is damaging his ability on the field.
No, I completely agree with you, and I think what's going to drive him this year too is I believe he's under he's contract year for him. So I mean, he has all the incentive in the world to go out there and win and produce for his team, and I think he will personally. Obviously everyone's got their question marks about his personality, his mentality, everything like that, but I have faith in them.
Here's the scary thing about the contract year, just real quick. They just opened negotiations to get him to sign an extension. So if the New York Football Giants give Odell a guaranteed money extension before this year starts, I think it puts him in a very, very scary position.
Yeah, no, definitely. But like I said, I have faith in them, and I think Eli. This is going to rejuvenate Eli's career, having a run game behind him now, and just pieces everywhere on that offense. But speaking of rejuvenating, we got to talk about Zeke Elliott on the Cowboys because he was suspended once again, as per usual.
Speaking of guys in that division that can't get their act together.
Yeah, for real. No, Jesus, those Ohio State products. What are you going to do about them? Zeke comes back, and of course, there's a stat, I keep seeing it all the time. They always talk about Dak Prescott. When Zeke Elliott is on the field with him, his numbers go through the roof when he has a run game behind him. But of course, he loses Dez Bryant in the process. And Shea, how is that going to affect the Cowboys?
Yeah, well, here's the thing about Dak Prescott. One, he didn't like throwing to Dez Bryant for some reason. Two, he gets Zeke Elliott back, but unless he rids himself of color blindness and learns to throw to only the players wearing his color uniform, I can't. I hate Dak Prescott, and it might be irrational, but I think the dude is terrible. And the numbers with Zeke are interesting, but it really just is more to me how good Zeke is compared to Dak being any good. I don't think Dak is a good NFL quarterback. So, like, you get Zeke Elliott back, it offers you that different dynamic because he's a 1 in a million running back. But do I really think that they can win a division with a quarterback like Dak Prescott? I don't know. And their defense has question marks now, too.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they're the Cowboys that were winning the division with the greatest offensive line that we've ever seen. I think this Cowboys team has a lot more question marks than usual, especially with the way Dak finished last season. Dude, I don't see him finishing higher than third place.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you on that. I just think it's going to be interesting to see if Dak Prescott gets better without Dez Bryant. It's kind of like I kind of compare it to Matthew Stafford when he lost Calvin Johnson. He was able to spread it around the field a little bit more. You know, there wasn't that pressure to throw Calvin the ball anymore, and his numbers kind of just improved. He was a more efficient quarterback. So I wonder if that's going to be the same thing with Dak. Maybe, you know, losing an all-star, you know, wide receiver and losing that pressure will make him better. But like you said, you echoed those concerns on defense too. They still have a lot of young pieces. Like, you know, they had their draft this year was pretty solid. Their draft last year was solid. I might be a little biased because they drafted Jordan Lewis out of U of M, and they also drafted I can't remember the D lineman's name. I'm blanking. They drafted a defensive end from Michigan. I don't know why. I'm a terrible Michigan fan for not remembering his name right now. But anyway, a lot of young pieces that were on that defense, and they're still there with Sean Lee, who just somehow withstands the test of time and still plays football at the age of 50 million years old. But yeah, I don't know. This team has got a lot of question marks right now, and for me, I don't see them finishing better than like a 7-9 record at most.
Yeah, I agree. And so the other thing we've been doing with this division breakdown is given kind of players that we think could have really good years. We did it from a fantasy standpoint last week. This week, I want to do something slightly different. I want to give one player from each team that's going to be the X factor to that team's success.
Okay.
So
that's interesting.
I'll start it off, and I'm going to start with the New York Giants. And for me, it's really, really simple. It's Saquon Barkley. We don't know yet what he looks like in the NFL. We have all the tape on him from college. I have questions about Saquon, too. I think he's the X factor because if he's as good as advertised, it's going to be very hard for defenses to stop them. We saw in college he went up against a run defense in Michigan that is consistently top in the nation and blew him up. But we also saw when he went up against Michigan State and East Lansing that he was just running into a wall every single try. So it's interesting to me whether or not he's going to be as good as advertised or if he's going to be a little disappointing. But I do think the success of the New York Giants hinges on his performance.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. That would be my X factor, too, if I had to pick one. But I think the other thing we have to remember, too, is at Penn State, he was like their number one option for offense on the field. Like, obviously, they threw the ball around a little bit, but he was getting the ball so many times a game, like he can get tired. And if he's just cutting down, like if they just throw the ball, like just have a balanced attack with Saquon Barkley and then OBJ right beside him, they're poised to be at least top 5 offense in the league if everything goes right for them. So yeah, of course Saquon Barkley is my guy for at least for the Giants. I guess now for me, for Philly, I don't know about you, Shea, but I think Carson Wentz is the X factor in Philly. Plain and simple. Is he going to come back and perform? Is he going to feel that pressure of Nick Foles right behind him? How is he going to respond this year? Is he going to go out there and show what he did last year? Or is he maybe going to have a little drop off after having a major ACL tear injury? I don't know, man. A lot of question marks for me.
And I'm with you that obviously Carson Wentz's success is going to be a huge part of the Eagles' success. But when they have a Super Bowl champion quarterback in the waiting, I don't want to call him an X factor. Who I think is the X factor for the Eagles is actually Fletcher Cox. If Fletcher Cox can be as disruptive as he's been able to be a lot in his career and just get through offensive lines and really cause problems in the backfield, the Eagles aren't going to have much to worry about.
Yeah, not to mention they added Michael Bennett this offseason too. So adding him on top of that already great defensive line with Brandon Graham, wins the Super Bowl for him practically. That's a star-studded defensive line, and I'm excited to watch.
Very, very fearsome front four.
Yeah, no one's really talking about it though. Everyone wants to talk about the LA Rams and Ndamukong Suh. I'm looking at Philly for that defensive line.
We'll get to the LA Rams next week. Moving on to the Dallas Cowboys. I don't want to do it because I just despise him, but I'm going to make Dak Prescott my X factor because the dude, has shown flashes of being a quality NFL quarterback. He had that stretch where his quarterback rating was astronomical, and he's also shown flashes of being just plain terrible. So I think it's which Dak shows up. That is where the Cowboys' success is going to be. We know that Zeke is going to be a force. We don't know what Dak is going to be, and that's where he's your X factor for me.
Yeah, I agree. But for me personally, I'm going to go with a group for an X factor for the Cowboys. I'm going to go with the wide receiver core of the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, you lose a guy like Des Bryant. You would expect them to regress. So guys like Cole Beasley, and they added Allen Hurns this offseason, who was on the Jaguars last year. He's kind of a low-key addition that I think could be solid for them. But they got to step up and help that run game out, and make it more effective by just doing their job, going out there and receiving the ball to their best ability.
Yeah, who you got for the Redskins?
I mean, to me, this is like the worst team in the division, but I don't even know where to begin. They have so many, just like, I can't trust them. I really can't. Like, I mean, Alex Smith is solid. To me, it's the defense. I would just put the defense as a whole as an X factor. If they can step up and improve, then maybe they have a shot at a wild card spot. But for me, no, it's a no from me, dog.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't think it's a very good team, but I will say I'm going defense with this team as well, specifically Josh Norman. That once upon a time, Josh Norman was first team All-Pro. He was a Pro Bowl cornerback. There was a legitimate argument that Josh Norman was the best cornerback on earth. And then he went and got paid, and he went to the Redskins. And since then, it's been kind of tough sledding. I think if Josh Norman can come out and really be a force and an island-type corner, all of a sudden, the Redskins' problems don't look quite as bad because the defense will come up. But again, that to me is on the back of Josh Norman. Okay, so moving on, we got to get to the NFC North. It's our division, it's the local division, and I'm sure that you have a lot to say about what you think the teams in this division are going to do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is the best division in football right now, hands down. You know, you can make arguments about other ones, but to me, maybe some bias in there, but the NFC North is clearly.
I honestly don't know that you can. I think it's the only, maybe the AFC West, but I don't think it's because they're that good. I really think the NFC North is the only division in football that I see four teams that I could legitimately call contenders.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of which, the team that was not a contender last year, who could be a contending team this year, the Chicago Bears. They of course got rid of John Fox as their head coach and added a new one. Mitch Trubisky in year 2 now, he showed flashes last year of capability of doing things, but his offense around him, his pieces were terrible. So what did they do? They go out and add guys like Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, and Trey Burton. Those are 3 names that many people aren't going to be throwing their hands up going crazy about, but those are solid guys that if you're a common fan of the NFL, those are guys that you should be looking out for, and you should know that they're solid players. And Allen Robinson, of course, had a season-ending injury last year, but I think he's going to be a big part of this offense, and just showing what a guy like Mitch Trubisky can do with a star like that. I think this is his breakout spot.
Important note for Allen Robinson, too, is he had his breakout season with Blake Bortles. This is a guy who, coming into playing with Mitch Trubisky, he has experience catching young quarterbacks. So I think it's going to be a really beneficial relationship for Mitch Trubisky, too. And honestly, I think Trubisky's poised for a breakout season.
Yeah, and not to mention, Chicago had a great defense last year. Like, I wouldn't say great. They were good. And, if they just return that defense and improve the offense a little bit more, they could make a run in this division. And if not make a run, they're going to be causing problems and causing these teams to just beat up on each other, just hand losses out to each other at the most random times. So it's going to be – I can't wait to see what they do. We interviewed Dan Orlowski on our other podcast a few months back, and he called them I think he said we compared them to the LA Rams of last year, and they have the potential to be that this year. Yeah,
I agree with them. I think, if I recall correctly, and I hope I'm not mixing it up, the Bears' defenses the past 2 years have been a little iffy stopping running backs, but against the pass, they have been consistently top 10. So
Yeah,
if you can return that, you're already cooking with gas. And now with an offense in place, they really have a shot to make some noise. What's interesting with them is first-year head coach. But worth noting, that Rams team that went nuts, first-year head coach.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. I'm excited to see what I'm not excited. I'm interested to see what they do because I do not want them beating up on our Detroit Lions, of course. But anyway, let's go to a staple of this division. Aaron Rodgers, of course, literally when you think of the NFC North, you think of Aaron Rodgers 9 times out of 10. He went down with an injury last year, Shea, and my question mark is, can he stay healthy for this team to have any success at all?
Easy preseason pick for comeback player of the year. Almost a lock.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Unless he goes down again,
which would honestly be shocking. I think the injury he had last year, it came on a hit that didn't look that bad, but he just landed awkwardly on his collarbone. Dude, everybody in the NFL struggles with injuries, and Aaron Rodgers is a guy who has always found a way to overcome that adversity. Obviously, a broken collarbone, there's only so much you can do, but I do think this is a guy who's a freak athlete. He's maybe the most talented quarterback we've ever seen in the NFL. I don't see, injury is the only way that I think the Packers are not good. The only problem with the Packers is, again, they got to do something about that defense.
Yeah.
If they don't, you can put up as many points as you want. If you're not stopping the other team, it doesn't matter, and that's why they get into those 40-point shootouts with the Lions.
Yeah, and Aaron Rodgers tried coming back for that last game of the season, if we remember, and it was against the Carolina Panthers, and it ended up being a shootout. And Rodgers came in and he did his thing. I'll give him props, just coming off, he came back early and did his thing, and the defense could not stop Cam Newton and the Panthers. And like I said, the defense just has so many question marks. Clay Matthews can't do it all, and of course they try to address it in the draft. They try to get some pieces, but that's going to be the number one thing. They did add Jimmy Graham though, and they do lose Jordy Nelson on offense, so that's going to be interesting. The offense is going to look a little different this year. I know you're not big on Jimmy Graham, but I think he could be solid for what the Packers do offensively.
My thing with Jimmy Graham on the Packers is this. For a team that's had such a revolving door at running back and struggled to really get a consistent run game and just floated above that because you have the unicorn in Aaron Rodgers, going out and getting a tight end who has never been a quality run blocker is a very weird move.
Yeah, and maybe that's where Jimmy Graham excelled, though, was in New Orleans, where they were running a spread offense. Maybe they stick with that. Let Aaron Rodgers just be Aaron Rodgers, do his thing, throw the ball around the yard, get him a receiving tight end like Jimmy Graham, and see what he can do. To me, though, this is not. Of course, you have to consider the Packers every year. You can't rule them out ever. I don't know. I don't feel the same as I usually do about the Packers this year as I have in other previous seasons.
I don't either. And I keep looking for the reason why. And again, I think it just comes down to they have not addressed that defense. And they need to if they really want to get good enough to go and play for a Super Bowl. You look at the teams that have won Super Bowls, the Eagles, awesome defense. The Patriots did it a little differently with more scheme than talent. But you look at the Broncos that won in spite of a horrible offense. And you just win with defense. And the Packers haven't done that. A team that did do that last year in the division was the Minnesota Vikings. Moving on to them, for some reason, this is a team I feel like regresses too, and I don't know why, because they went out and got Kirk Cousins, which to me is an upgrade over Case Keenum, but for whatever reason, I just can't see them going 13-3 again.
No, I'm on board with you. I completely agree. Everyone wants to point to the Vikings as the top dog in the division, which, respectfully so, they probably are right. But you can't just throw in a new quarterback like this. And Cousins, he was with the Redskins his whole career, and you're just going to uproot him, take him to a new city, and just hope to plug him in and that it works. And I don't think it works like that. It doesn't make sense in my head that he's going to come out there and just have this great, outstanding season. New location, new offensive coordinator, just new pieces everywhere around him. He's got to get used to all of that. But I will say one thing though. He does have a great defense to help him, and he does also have great offensive weapons. Guys like Dalvin Cook, who's going to be returning if he can stay healthy. His injury last year was just so weird, and of course happened against the Detroit Lions. It was so he didn't even get hit. It was more of just a thing he fell over and tore his ACL. So if he can stay healthy, they definitely have a shot to, be productive on the field.
I also do have questions about the defense, because as much as we saw a defense that was capable of shutting opposing offenses down, they had they gave up a lot of points sometimes. And you look at the last 6 quarters that they played in the playoffs, they gave up over 70 points with that second half resurgence by the Saints, where they got bailed out by a miracle. And then you go to Philly and they just got blown off the field. So I do have some questions about this defense coming back too, and if they can come back and really be as good as they were. The one thing that people aren't talking enough about with the Vikings is the return of Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, of course. And like I've said before, I think Dalvin Cook, if he stays healthy, he added a whole new element to that run game, which, even when he went down, it was still effective. But when he's in there, it brings him to a whole new level of production.
He was Adrian Peterson-esque.
Yeah, he was. He really was. And if it wasn't for a freak injury, the Lions probably lose that first game, in my opinion. Minnesota was in control up until the end. So I don't know, man. Like, this team is to me, the Vikings are a coin toss. It's either going to go really good or it's going to go kind of bad. And it could be somewhere in the middle where Cousins comes in and he struggles for the first half of the season, but he finally gets used to the new offense and everything, and they hit the gas in the second half. But to me, I'm kind of leaning towards the bad half for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to be optimistic about this season for the Lions. Maybe I'm just wishful thinking, but I really do feel that way.
Speaking of the Lions, there's a feeling in this city, in media specifically, and there's a feeling in the nation when I turn on the TV and people are talking about the Lions, that it's all doom and gloom. And I don't understand it at all. I
do not either, bro. It blows my mind. Like, we have this mentality in Detroit and Michigan as a whole that the Lions are just, it's over. Like, nothing's going to go right for us. And I try to change that. I don't like the same old Lions saying. I don't like any of that. I want to see them go out and perform. And I just wish fans would echo the same sentiment. And maybe it would, maybe some good fortune would happen and go our way if people were like that.
Yeah, and honestly, this is a team that if you look at what they put on the field last year, and then you look at they got rid of Jim Caldwell, automatic improvement. You add Matt Patricia, even more improvement. Hold on to Jim Bob Cooter, whatever. It's his time. He's had 2.5 years. He's been bottom 5 in running. So what did Matt Patricia do when he came in? He went to the draft, and he got him a running back, and he got him an offensive line. Go show me that you can run a running game. Like, I don't understand how anyone can look at this team this year and go, they're not as good as they were last year. There's no way that they're not better.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And we talked about the free agency signings that they had in the offseason on our other podcast, and it wasn't flashy signings at all. It was solid signings is what I would call them. They're just pieces that are going to fit in this defense schematically, and we know Matt Patricia loves his schemes. He loves running different sets and just mixing it up and being versatile. And this team has shown that they can be versatile, even under Terrell Austin last year. He ran a lot of different sets and threw a lot of different people out there. So I think this defense is going to adjust really quickly to this new defensive coordinator, new head coach, and all that. And like you mentioned before, the offense is, Jim Bob Cooter did his thing passing. The running game was a big question mark. So of course they go and address that. They get Frank Ragnow, and then they add Kerryon Johnson in the second round. Quick side note. Shea is probably sick of hearing this, but for all my fantasy players out there, if you want a good team name,
my God.
Carry On My Wayward Son is my fantasy football team name. If you would like to use it, you have my permission. Go ahead.
Jesus.
Anyway.
Let's get back to the show.
Back to my point real quick. If they get the run game going, and Kerryon Johnson kind of has this Le'Veon Bell running style, if you watch the tape on him, it's just very interesting to me, and it could work out. But if they get the run game going, just getting 100 yards a game is going to improve their offense dramatically and help that defense out even more and just keep them off the field. I have a lot of optimism, and I don't understand why there is so much negativity around this team, Shea.
This division might send 3 teams to the playoffs.
It's possible. It sure is possible. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think
if there were any division in football that could do it, this team might send 3 teams to the playoffs. I don't know that I can go and find teams that I think are going to finish in wild card spots in the rest of the NFC that are as good as the teams that could finish in wild card spots in the NFC North.
I agree, and I think when you get rid of a coach like Jim Caldwell, who did not know how to manage a football team at all, he had the most blunders, the most stupid blunders I've ever seen. You know, he was a great players coach is what they called him, but he could not manage a game for shit. If Matt Patricia can come in and do at least 50%, add 50% to what Jim Caldwell could do as far as managing football games, this team would probably end up winning 11 games a season and maybe beating a team with above a 500 record for once in the last 10 years or whatever it is. So I'm optimistic, and I've seen reports, I've been reading articles that Patricia's bringing in this physical style to practices. He wants to get physical with practices. He wants to do full padded tackling. He wants to do all that. And Jim Caldwell would not let his players tackle in practices. And I already love Matt Patricia for that. This team needs that edge, that physicality. They couldn't break through on the goal line last year in that Steelers game. That must have been the most frustrating game I've ever watched in my life. And if they can just break through, get the goal line going, get the run game going, get some physical action, this team's bound for success in the NFC North.
Well, you said it on Twitter a little while ago, Tanner. Sometimes you got to be bold. I'm being bold. The Lions are winning the NFC North. Call me crazy if you want. Go ahead and tell me you don't know first-year head coach. It never works out. Oh, really? Don't tell Sean McVay. Dude, I look at the Lions and I look at the rest of these teams and I look at the defense that the Vikings are putting out and I know it's good, but I don't know if it's good enough to stop Matthew Stafford. And here's where people aren't talking about Matthew Stafford enough. They just go, he doesn't look good against teams that are over 500. He can't beat playoff teams. He's never had an offensive line. This year he does. Watch out.
Yeah, if they can stay healthy. They had their problems last year. TJ Lane could not stay on the field for a damn, and Rick Wagner went down a couple times. And then, of course, Taylor Decker. Yeah, Taylor Decker was out for the first half of the season or whatever.
So people don't talk about how important that is, too. Left tackle with a right-handed quarterback is maybe the most important position on your offense.
Of course. And, they, of course, lose Eric Ebron, too, who wasn't much of a blocking tight end. But they added these tight ends who are good at run blocking. But they had a guy like Luke Wilson who had potential at just receiving as well. He was kind of overshadowed by Jimmy Graham in Seattle. But I think he has potential to go out there and be a good receiving tight end. And Stafford has shown throughout his career that he likes throwing to the tight end. It's just a matter of whether the guy can catch the damn ball, Eric Ebron. Cough, cough.
Who's your division winner?
Lions. I completely agree with you. I don't think I've ever felt like the Lions were a clear-cut favorite. I don't think they are a clear-cut favorite. I just think that, I got some type of optimism about this team. Bringing in Matt Patricia, this new regime, and keeping Jim Bob Cooter too, just keeping that consistency with Stafford is going to help him. I got a good feeling, Shea. And for me, I don't know about you, the record that I think they accomplished this year is 11-5. And winning the NFC North.
And that's the thing about the division, too, is obviously you got to play all the teams in it twice. This is a division that, while I say it could get 3 teams into the playoffs, it's just as likely to be a bloodbath. And it might be a division where 10 wins gets you the crown. So that's a thing that you have to look at, too. And if we want to go ahead, and I guess now we have our picks, we'll go and do the X factors for each team. I'll start with the Lions. And honestly, to me, I'm going to make it a unit. It's the offensive line. If the offensive line can stay healthy and can block and create actual opportunity for play action and for running, dude, the Lions are going to be really hard to beat.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm going to go a little different, though. I'm going to go 2 guys. I'm going to give you Kerryon Johnson and LeGarrette Blount. I think that duo, if Kerryon Johnson can come in right away and produce, give him even just 80 yards a game, and then bring in a LeGarrette Blount to get in 20 just on those short yardage situations, I think that could be a big, big thing. This team struggled on short distance, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, stuff like that. That's going to be a big thing moving forward. So, yeah, the 2 running backs are going to be my X factors.
Yeah, and like you said, now I do think with the running backs that you have to feature Kerryon Johnson, and I think that LeGarrette Blount should be used as your battering ram. I think I've said that before, but yeah, definitely, and that goes kind of hand in hand with what I said with the offensive line. If we move on to Minnesota, not only is he my a comeback player of the year favorite, He's the X factor for the team, in my opinion, Dalvin Cook. I've said I have questions about the defense's sustainability. We saw them get very weak down the line in the playoffs against good teams. Obviously, a really easy way to make your defense better is have an offense that holds onto the ball for a really long time. How many times have we seen the Cowboys win games just because Zeke Elliott kept getting first downs and their defense was able to get on the field rested? It's the same thing for the Vikings. If Dalvin Cook can keep creating time for the offense to be on the field, that defense automatically gets better.
Yeah, I think that's a great choice. I'm just to change it up a bit, I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins. It's kind of an easy one, but how quickly can he adapt? How quickly can he come in and be a staple of this team and just get that offense moving? You still got guys like Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs to throw to, so he's not short of weapons at all. But it's just going to come down to him learning the offense, just getting accustomed to his new environment, and going out there and winning games. So I think Kirk Cousins, man, you got to come out, you got to show what you're capable of.
Yeah, and I agree, because Kirk Cousins is a guy who they'll always be able to hold over him that he wasn't able to win the big games in Washington. So now he's on a team where for once he's kind of surrounded with talent. Show us.
Yeah, it's all on him.
I want to go with the Packers next, and my X factor is a little different for this one. My X factor for the Packers is Mike Pettin, the defensive coordinator, because I think he has to come in with a unit that we all can kind of agree is less talented than most, and it comes down to coordination. We've seen what Terrell Austin was able to do with a defense that a lot of scouts have said wasn't very talented in Detroit, and Terrell Austin was able to scheme it. We've seen what Matt Patricia did for the Patriots, where he had an offense or a defense that didn't have a ton of flashy names, a ton of talent on it, and he schemed it into a Super Bowl winning defense. So to me, the defensive coordinator is the X factor for the Packers. Go out and get this unit into a scheme where they can kind of thrive. Because I think in the NFL especially, you can put players in good positions even if they aren't as talented, and good things will happen.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely agree that the defense got to step up. But I think the obvious one, I keep going to the quarterback position, but Rodgers, you got to stay on the field. You got to stay healthy for your team, because when he went down last year, they were a completely different team. They just looked lost on the field. And it's crazy to think that like if they had a win above replacement for Aaron Rodgers, it'd be sky high, because the dude's is a lock for just being a 9-win team with him on the field, and then the pieces around him add even more to that win total. So if he stays healthy, they're always going to be in contention, just because he is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever do it. So he's just got to stay healthy, Shea.
Yeah, and it's an easy pick for sure. It's one of the best players, if not the best player in football. So obviously, as goes Aaron Rodgers, so goes the Packers. I think that just goes without saying. If you move down south to the Bears in Chicago, my pick is the wide receiver, Allen Robinson. You look at a guy, he's entering his 5th year in the season. He's in a new environment with a new quarterback, new coaching staff. He's got some things to learn. But this is a guy who, in 2015, 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns, huge season, really just a breakout year, made a huge name for himself. The year after kind of came down a little bit, played all 16 games, but only caught 800 yards. He only had 6 touchdowns, a little bit of regression. And then obviously last year, dude had 1 catch and the season was over. So for me, it's, can Allen Robinson get back to being that Pro Bowl, that all-pro caliber wide receiver with Mitch Trubisky, and kind of offer some consistency to an offense that was previously relying on Kevin White?
Yeah. That I will say real quick about Allen Robinson, that 2015 season where he broke out, people don't realize that a lot of those stats came in junk time. The Jaguars were so terrible that year that they just had no choice but to throw it around the yard by trailing, by 3 touchdowns. That's where a lot of his yardage and his touchdowns came from. Not to take anything away from him, I still think he's a solid wide receiver. But for me, it's Mitch Trubisky. He's got to improve. He's got to keep, just showing he's capable of being a starting quarterback in the NFL. He showed great intangibles last year, but of course he didn't have any weapons. And now he's got the running game like he had last year with Jordan Howard, but now he's got some wide receivers, like you mentioned, Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, Trey Burton. They got to go out there and perform and show that, with a new head coach, that they're a young team, but they got to go out there and show that they want to compete for a title.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point, and I think the Bears really, again, are the dark horse team in this division, where people just look at them and go, well, they haven't been good in a few years. I think they really have an opportunity to break out and turn things around this year. That's all the time we got for this week's Monday Mashup on Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Again, listeners, Tanner, everyone in the world, we don't have to go another weekend without football until February.
Yes, I can't wait.
Just beautiful. Just a wonderful time to be alive.
It is. It's quite the time.
Thanks for listening. Have a great week.
Thanks.